Hello and welcome. My name is Walter McGrory and this is Call of the Runes. And today we're going to talk about Wunjo. Wunjo is the 8th rune of the first Iyat. And with that we come to the end of the first Iyat in this rune series. And there's a joyous occasion and it fits because that is also what the literal meaning of this rune is. Phonetically, the rune Wunjo represents the W letter or the W sound. It is a rune of joy, bliss and harmony, but also in its own way a rune of Odin in its shamanistic forms. It represents our connection to the cosmos, or aesthetic understanding, and one of Odin's many names is Njotr, which means he who experiences joy, tying back to the meaning of this rune, joy. And with that, let us begin. We're beginning with the rune poems, and like the previous rune, this rune only has an Anglo-Saxon rune poem because it does not appear in the Icelandic or the Norwegian rune poem cycles because they're based on the Futhark, the younger Futhark runes. Bliss he enjoys who knows not suffering, sorrow nor anxiety, and has prosperity and happiness and a good enough house. What I feel is most prominent about this rune poem is that it clearly emphasizes on bliss being a state of mind. The poem defines bliss as the absence of suffering, sorrow and anxiety, and not living in a giant mansion or having plenty, but a good enough house. Enough is enough and good enough is good enough. This idea is also echoed in the Havamal 36, which reads, "Better a house, though hut it be. A man is a master at home. A pair of goats and a patched up roof are far better than being a beggar." So for a culture that is sometimes in media depicted as being very materialistic, always covered in gold, or trying to hoard gold, the rune poems or the Havamal show that they are maybe surprisingly non-materialistic. Doesn't mean that everybody who lived in the Scandinavian cultures was very non-materialistic, but religiously speaking, that was seen at least as an ideal. And we also saw that idea in the video on Feu, how there also is talked about not hoarding your own wealth. Here as well, don't want too much, want enough. Wealth and drinking are fun, but some clothes and a roof, that is good enough to have a blissful life, according to the Havamal. We can also see this idea back in some charms and amulets. There's a brooch, KJ 166, which is found in the village of Bezenye in Hungary. It was part of a set of 2 brooches, which probably belonged to 2 different women, and the inscription reads as follows, if translated. Godahild, joy. This inscription shows that not all runic charms were long and full of hidden depths, but this was a simple statement of intent, the name of the person who the brooch belonged to, and the word joy. This was not the word joy fully written out, but this is just the Wunjo rune on there. So it's Godhilja Wunjo rune, or joy for Godahild. We see similar ideas in the saga of the Sigtryggvamal, where there's an exchange between Sigurd and the Valkyrie Brunhilde. She teaches Sigurd some runic magic here, and one stanza reads, "Beer I bring thee, 3 of battle, mingled of strength and mighty fame, charms it holds and healing signs, spells full good and joy runes." This is from Sigtryggvamal 5. 3 of battle is a name to refer to Sigurd because he's such a large and strong man, and Brunhilde brings him a draught full of magic charms to increase his health, strength and joy. How that is exactly done is told later in the story. It includes a few more runic drinks, and it ends with an explanation that goes as follows. "Shaven off were the runes that of old were written, and mixed with the holy mead." Sigtryggvamal 18. So from this exchange we can infer that one of the ways rune magic was performed was by inscribing the rune on a piece of wood and then scratching or filing it off into a drink. And we can also conclude that Wunjo, because that is the joy rune, was one of those runes that was used for these beneficial draughts. Because she says, end joy runes in Sigtr Frumal, number 5. So it is a very important rune that was extensively used to make people's lives more joyful, and maybe also for other purposes. The next thing we're going to look at is cultural relevance. And in cultural relevance, the word Wunjo is etymologically related to the German Wune, which means bliss, and Wunsch, which means a wish. And in early Germanic poetry, a wish is slightly broader in meaning than it is today. A wish is almost a conscious force that blooms into reality as a divine providence. In this way, Wunjo is a rune of a moment where the divine is perfectly aligned with reality. A rune of skaldic perspiration, or as a shamanistic trance, or just a beautiful sunny afternoon when the sun is out and the breeze is just perfect. It is the exact right moment where you're in exactly the right place, where the universe aligns. That is what Wunjo is. That's what bliss is, and that is also what a wish is in its core. The name Odin most likely comes from the word Odr, which means inspiration or ecstasy, and the suffix in, which means masculine. And his name then translates to man of inspiration, or man of bliss, or just bliss or inspiration in the masculine form. In that way, the name Odin represents his very shamanistic role that he takes in the sagas. The Havamal has many sections underlying the importance of learning and from experience and travel, as we saw in the Ansys rune. But it also lists wisdom in sources that come from other places. Much of Odin's knowledge comes from more extraordinary sources than just book learning and traveling the world. Odin's happenings around the 9 realms comes from his 2 spirit animals, Hugin and Mudin, thought and memory. And his knowledge of the runes comes from a ritual where he passed through death, a common theme among shamanistic rituals of the Nordic people. Odin's eloquence and prophetic poetry stem from his intoxication by the mead of poetry. And also intoxication here, again, is in the sagas a common way to gain wisdom. So it is more of an aesthetic wisdom that he has gotten, and then a wisdom that he gets from book learning. And that, in that sense, that inspiration also ties back to Wunjo. So, in conclusion, Wunjo, in its simplicity, is sometimes hard to grasp. We all understand the word joy, but defining it is a little bit more complicated. What brings joy, and how do you know that you have it? A measure of wisdom each man shall have, but never too much, let him think. For the wise man's heart is seldom happy. If wisdom too great, he has won, says Havamal 55 in a warning. That means that other runes can give us more clarity on what Wunjo means in a specific context. For instance, if we would combine Wunjo with the Ansys rune, Odin's rune, Wunjo could represent poetry or storytelling. But in combination with Manas, the mankind rune, or Berkana, the birch rune, that could represent joy on a more social side, such as the happiness amongst friends and good relationships between children and their parents. That concludes Wunjo, and that concludes with it the first ayat. Next week we'll continue with the next rune, the first rune of the second ayat. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and share. If you would like to know more, and then I put out in this video, everything that I said, plus a lot more, is available in the book Call of the Runes, available on Amazon. And I hope to see you again next time. Goodbye.